What's up, folks, and welcome to Retro Ramble. So we're going to be doing something a bit different here today. So my recent indie ramble on Prison City did surprisingly well, like way better than I normally would have expected. So first off, thank you guys all for watching that. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. And well, a bunch of the commenters in that video were talking to me about what it seems the game's inspirations were. I said that it kind of felt like a lightish version of Mega Man. But a lot of other people chimed in and said it reminded them of three different NES games: Batman, Power Blade, and Shatterhand. These are three games that I have to admit are big gaps in my retro history. People said they're all really good, but I'd never played them before. And well, I was curious to see how these would have inspired Power Blade. So we're going to do something interesting tonight. We're going to do a blind play, a quick few minutes of each of the three games. I haven't touched them before other than to make sure they run. And we're going to try them out and see what they're like and see how they relate to Prison City. So I'm curious if you guys like this kind of video. So definitely leave a comment down below and let me know. All three of these games are for the NES. I don't believe they're on any digital service right now, but I did manage to acquire copies of both of these. I got this one off eBay for a really, really good price. This one's fairly common. This is actually, Power Blade and Shatterhand are both pretty expensive actually, but I found a copy of this locally at a better price than I found on eBay. I haven't actually found a Shatterhand yet, but I'm working on that. So I will be playing all these through an emulator just because it's easier to capture them all. But yeah, I haven't touched any of these really, and I'm going to go into them and take a look because people were really saying how much these are like the are like the influences that went into Prison City. So I'm curious about that. There will be chapters down below, so you can skip to whatever game you're most interested in checking out if you want. But yeah, leave a comment down below. Tell me if you agree that Prison City is a lot like these, and let me know what your favorites of them are, or any other games like this that you think might be good contributors to this kind of thing. So, all right, without further ado, let's dig right in. All right, guys, and here we are starting off with Batman. This was the first game of the three that people brought up in the comments, and I actually played a ton of Batman back on the Game Boy back in the day, which was done by this same developer, but I actually completely skipped over the NES game. So this is going to be an interesting one for me because a lot of people were saying that this is an unmitigated classic from the NES, and yeah, I miss Sunsoft. Sunsoft is still around. They still actually produce a lot of stuff in Japan, but they pretty much left the North American market after the Super Nintendo era, more or less. And they put out some bangers on the NES, to be honest with you. So yeah, I definitely miss them. And man, I'll tell you right off the bat here, this is a very impressive color palette they have going on here. Very unusual. But I kind of dig it. It's almost like based around primary colors, kind of. And it's like, I guess this was their idea of trying to interpret the color palette of a comic book within the limitations of an 8-bit console. Pretty neat. So a couple of things I do know here from checking out the manual beforehand. So the pause button is actually the select button on this game, which is very unusual for the NES. And start actually allows you to change between weapons. So you start off with just your fists, but you have the Batarang, which I'm sure is the weapon most people associate with Prison City. You also have what looks like a gun that shoots missiles. Well, that's kind of cool. And also, ooh, that's almost like that's like a spinning disc attack that shortly after you send it out turns into like the Contra spread shot. I kind of dig that. Ooh, that's neat. Okay, and then I guess when it just says Batman, you're punching with your fists. That punching animation is actually really, really good for the NES. A lot of frames of animation in there. Well, I'll tell you from a production standpoint right off the jump, I can see why people are into this. I really do like this art style. It's very cool. Like seeing Batman kind of in that blue shade, but contrasted against the background of the, you know, the sort of red background of the levels and stuff is very neat. So one thing I did notice, it's a little odd, but not the end of the world, is that it doesn't take your weapons away between screens, but it does set you back to your fists when the screen refreshes. So you got to pay attention to that to make sure that you don't lose your or that you don't go to attack an enemy that you thought was going to need a ranged attack, and all of a sudden you just like, That's all right. I like the music on this too. The Sunsoft had some good composers on them. You know, their stuff wasn't necessarily as memorable as some of the Capcom bangers that we'd hear from Mega Man or the like, but their stuff was solidly made. You know, there were a lot of NES games by mostly lesser known developers and publishers that had some really music that was either very grating or was made by people who really didn't understand how to take who really didn't understand how to take full advantage of the NES sound chip, which when you knew how to really make that thing work, you could make some amazing stuff, really amazing stuff. Okay, I'm not a fan of you, and you're flying around and getting in my face like that. Okay, so this does do the traditional NES platformer thing of if you scroll off the screen from where an enemy spawned, when you come back on, the enemy will respawn. That's a pretty typical thing, so I can understand that. So are you okay? I was like, that's a little misleading. I was like, am I supposed to talk to that dude? And it's like, because he's just kind of hanging out there, and it's like, nah, you gotta take him out. So, okay, so this didn't start me back at the very beginning of the level, but it did start me back at the start of this screen. So, okay. Not wholly unusual, and you do have rests or lives. So, yeah, so you do have a limited number of these things. I don't know if this lets you continue. I assume it does. This game does not have a reputation for being... There's what I call NES hard and what I call NES cruel. You know, most games, I've said this a million times before, right? Most games back in this era were quite difficult because they didn't have the ability, due to technical limitations, of making games necessarily with a huge amount of content. So in order to make it something that you couldn't beat in 5 minutes and return to the store, they had to make them difficult. But there's a way to make games hard without making them petty and mean. And a lot of developers in the 8-bit era did not understand the difference. Not at all. So I'm curious to see if this at least has continues. This game doesn't have a reputation for being NES cruel. So I don't mind if it's difficult, but if you just do me a solid, like give me checkpoints, which this does do, and give me the ability to continue after a level. If not, save. I doubt you can save in this. I'd be very surprised if they spent the money to put a battery backup in this. It may have a password system, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, the controls are pretty snappy. Everything's pretty responsive. Oh, you can stun lock guys. If you can actually like sort of rapid fire punch and stun lock at least some kinds of enemies. Probably not all of them, but okay, here we go. First boss. Didn't waste a lot of time on that first level, and he's okay. He's kind of a dick. He's not... A lot of games like this often would have the first boss be kind of easy to sort of ease you in, and then they would ramp up the pain. Nope. This isn't doing that. I'm actually not sure the ideal way to hit him. Geez, when Batman dies, he just friggin' goes into like a ball of fire, doesn't he? And I don't start with any weapon refresh, so this is one of these things where if you come into this battle and you fail it, you gotta fist start it. Oh, I don't know about that. I'm not quite like learning patterns and whatnot is all all fine and dandy with me, but I haven't even gotten one hit in on this guy yet. Without weapons, I'm not actually sure how you're supposed to hit this dude. I'm sure there's a way to figure it out. You know, these are blind plays, people. So when you see, when you see that I will probably obviously suck at it, don't go too, don't be too mean about it. I haven't learned anything yet. Okay, so there is continues, but that takes me back to that screen, not to the boss. Okay, so there's no checkpoints at the boss itself. Not unusual. Not as cruel as Definitely not as cruel as making you restart the entire level, so I can give him that. So it looks like you gotta really hang on to your weapons and I guess be careful about how you use them getting to the boss. Maybe rely on the fists more if you can, because I honestly am not sure, because of how low he swoops to the ground, I'm actually not sure how I'm supposed to hit him with just the fists. There must be some way, but yeah, hard to say. So I don't know, I guess all these weapons share the same ammo pool. They just take different amounts of it, but I'm not sure, because it shows that was interesting. So I picked up those B power-ups there, but it didn't actually give me any more ammo. But you see, it is definitely using the same ammo pool for every weapon, but different weapons, the more powerful weapons use more ammo. Yeah, okay, so the little, I assumed when you picked up the missile power-up, it was just for that gun, but no, that's for everything. So that's interesting. So I don't know what the B's are for. Is that just score, I guess? Because this game actually does keep score, though this is one of those NES games that keeps score but doesn't have a high score mechanic, which kind of makes you wonder why they bothered dedicating the memory to it to begin with. I get, maybe the B's are just points. I assume so, because it doesn't seem to be, it's not giving me health. So here's what I'm gonna try. Oh, you got range on you. Oh, you little bugger. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna switch to this. I mean, I'm gonna lose this fight, most likely, because I've only got 2 health. Good boss music, though. Real good boss music. Oh, crap, right. It switches your weapons back. So, see, dodging those projectiles is not hard. Dodging in his swoop attack, especially when you have no... Oh, very nice. Okay. That makes things way more reasonable. So you don't get to, you can't get any more weapons, weapon ammo in this fight, but if you die, you don't lose your weapon ammo. So that I like. I do kind of wish the game would remember what the last weapon was that you had equipped. Also, you can't shoot up. So if I want to hit this dude, I've got to hit him when he's coming down at me. So still tricky, honestly. But chances are, if I can get him, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just bad on the timing. If you can get him, if you can punch at the right time when he swoops down, you don't stun lock him, but you interrupt him. But man, I'm bad at this, like really bad at this. Come here, you bugger. So you saw me do it right at the start of the fight there. There. You got to get him at just the apex of his drop, though. Man, that's rough. Yeah, that is rough. Oh, man. I don't know if we're even going to get past the first boss in this, but these were just designed to be sort of quick impressions of these to see if they're games that I want to continue playing. So here's what I'm going to check. Okay, I got 1,400. And if I pick up the B, I get 2,400. Yeah, so the B's are just points, which, again, if you don't have high score, I always found that weird. The Castlevania games did this too. Like, the Castlevania platformers are my favorite Castlevanias. Always have been, always will be. But I always found it odd how they went to all the time and effort to create a full scoring system and then don't even have a high score tracker in it. You're like, well, why did you bother? It just seems odd that you would leave out, like, the whole reason you make scores is to have that competitive angle to them. And sure, you can keep track of scores yourself, and I guess maybe the idea was that because the high scores would be lost when you powered off your NES, that if you were really competitive about it, that you just keep it written down somewhere anyway. I guess maybe that was probably the thought behind it, but I don't know. Seems odd to me is all. You know, keeping a value in memory that just remembers your top score and displays it to you is not that difficult, especially when, you know, the game doesn't show you your score on that continue screen. So if you die and you're not sure what your score was, you will have lost it before you had a chance to record it, right? So, I mean, even back in 86 with Contra, that did the whole thing where it showed your score off the main game screen. In fact, it only showed your score between lives, but it had the high score in it. So it was easy to keep on top of that, right? He's just standing there. He's just like, yeah, you shoot me all you want. I ain't care. I'm a cool ninja, man. All right, let's try this again. Not confident. Okay, oops, I'm back on fists, but you know what? I got him. So clearly, whether or not I think whether or not he does his bullet wave there is dependent on how close you are to him. So you can basically pattern him into, you can basically make it so that he never shoots that, depending on how close you choose to get to him. Okay. Not gonna make it, I don't think, but I get the pattern a lot more now. I just have to get that timing down. So what the? I don't know if that's because of the emulator or what, but either it kept the either it remembers the boss health in between lives or it glitched. Because I'm pretty sure, I don't think I killed him. I didn't get that many shots on him in that life. Maybe I got lucky? I don't know. Huh. Hashtag just NES things. Well, at least we got to the second level, so again, really cool environments. I really do like the contrasting colors. And yeah, the music in this is really growing on me. That background, like, digital drum sample they got going there is nice. I like it. And man, it is handing me ammo for days. So yeah, I can see a little bit of what this has in common with Prison City. Definitely, especially with the weapon mechanics and some other things like that. I can kind of see how that works. It's definitely, I can see some inspiration here. The people in the comments who mentioned the next two games told me that those were very much more, they felt much more an inspiration than this was. But so yeah, what do I think about this? Do I want to throw this on my deep backlog to try to finish it? You know what? I think I will. I think I might throw that on there. If you guys don't know what the deep backlog is, you can check, there's a link in the description that you can check out. The deep backlog is a backlog of retro games, usually considered very good ones that I never got to finish back in the day. They're kind of blind spots in my gaming history, if you will. And I'm planning to go through those on my streams for the next little while. So yeah, I might throw this on there. So definitely drop me a follow over on Twitch if you want to see me finish this one. But yeah, so that's the NES Batman. It's cool. I see why people like it. I see why it's well regarded. I'm playing it terribly because I haven't played it before, but I clearly should have, and I'm gonna work on that. Aha! Oh, there's a grappling mechanic too. I must have missed that when I was checking out the manual. I was wondering why. That grappling mechanic, the way he sort of grabs onto the corners of things, that's very much a Prison City thing. Actually, one of the things about Prison City that kind of annoyed me, because that the grappling in Prison City is actually not very responsive. Oh, he doesn't even grapple so much as he does wall kicks. This is something that you see in every game under the sun today. You didn't see very often back in the NES, that sort of wall jumping like that. That's very cool. Oh, I'm glad I got to come across that before we wrap this one. That's very cool. Wow, the game doesn't give you much time to pick up power-ups, does it? So yeah, I'm gonna say this is NES hard, but not NES mean. So that's cool. All right, well, that's a good place to stop right there. So yeah, that's Batman on the NES. I like it. I think this one is going to go on the deep backlog. So we'll check that out. So, all right, let us move on to Power Blade, and we'll check that out next. All right, guys, and here we are with Power Blade. So yeah, if you want to find a copy of this yourself, it's definitely going to cost you. This is actually more expensive than I would have thought. I mean, it was popular enough that it actually got a sequel back in the day, so you wouldn't think there would be that few around, but yeah. This definitely will cost you, like, this Batman cost me like 13 bucks. This Power Hand cart definitely cost me a good chunk more than that. Especially if you want to find this complete in box. I hope you're prepared to skip a mortgage payment. But we actually have a local retro gaming retailer in this small town I live in, actually, who happened to have a copy of that around. And I'm not going to say I didn't pay nothing for it, but I definitely paid less than the going rate on eBay, which was nice. And, well, having no shipping, because they'll let you go pick it up, is very nice as well. So I'm telling you, one thing I can see off the bat here with Prisons that this has in common with Prison City is contacts. So one of the mechanics in Prison City is that you have to find a contact in each level to talk to get the key to open the door to the boss. Looks like you have to do something similar with this one. So we got to take this very clear proto Duke Nukem looking guy and try to go check that out and see what's going on here. So this intro, I think, goes on for a little bit. That's clearly a Terminator inspired splash screen if I ever done seen one. But all right, let's kick this off. So yeah, Taito's efforts on the NES were pretty good. They were a little hit and miss. You know, Taito's one of the, okay, wow. And you get to pick your level. So boy, if this isn't, yeah, this is a Prison City thing, all right. So you got to take out all the different sectors, which you can do in any order. Yep. Okay. So Taito was, as I've said for a long time, is a developer that I don't think gets enough credit. You know, people know them for very specific things like Space Invaders and the like, but a lot of people don't give Taito credit for a lot of the of cool games they made, including what I always used to like to call Taito weird. Taito produced a lot of titles that were just, well, I did great there, didn't I? Taito produced a lot of titles that were, even as Japanese games go, very off the wall and different. And it was something I always really respected them for, because not everything they made was a hit. Their stuff was very, you know, sometimes hit and miss, but they put out a lot of cool stuff that people don't give them enough credit for, in my opinion, and don't remember them well enough for. Okay, so we have some weapon selection here, and yeah, this one I'm gonna say is much more like Prison City. You got to find the contacts. I will say it's a little hard to distinguish the background from the foreground in this, but yeah, so you have to find contacts. You can play the levels in any order. Your weapon is another boomerang kind of thing that has a power meter that charges the longer you go without firing it. So I'm guessing probably when you juice it up some more that you can rapid fire it like in Prison City, but you can't, but you probably can't, you can't run it down or it won't hurt the enemies as much. So yeah, right off the jump, I'm very much seeing how this relates, why people say this was a Prison City inspiration, because yeah, it very clearly was. And that's okay, right? Like, for starters, these games are a million years old and you can't play them anymore without emulating them or buying a cartridge, because I don't think these ever came to any digital system. So the fact that Prison City plays an awful lot like one of these is not a bad thing. I think it's cool to take inspiration. I love the way this dude runs. That's hilarious. So this plays, yeah, I can definitely see the relations here, though. The controls in this, ooh, nice hamburger. The controls in this don't feel as snappy or smooth as Prison City, or I'm gonna say even Batman. They don't feel bad, but ooh, you can go to the left. Nice. They don't feel, oh, there's my contact. Oh, it's my contact. Must be Nova. I'm your contact here. I bet your name is Chad. Take this ID card for Sector 1. I think I will. Thank you. So, also, this game has a timer, and it's a long freaking timer. There we go. So you see now I've got more power from my boomerang, so I can shoot multiple ones, in fact. Okay, that's different. In Prison City, well, you could have multiple ones out there, but if you held onto it, I believe it did more damage. So this just allows you to have multiple projectiles out there. Very cool. Okay, I like that. That's an enemy straight out of Prison City right there. The little thing that appears and then coalesces around you. Okay, now I've got full power. Oh yeah, let's bring this thing. Yeah, I'm actually liking this. So, like, one of the things I was saying a few minutes ago is that, yeah, Taito had what I used to call the Taito weird factor. And this is something I want to do a video on someday, because they put out so many cool things that Taito did a lot of one-offs. They had series that they made, but they made a lot of games that were purposely, even when they did fairly well, were purposely just one-off titles that you never saw again. And I kind of always respected them for that, because they took a lot of chances, they took a lot of creative risks, and they weren't afraid to try different, oh, buy power up. They weren't afraid to try different things and to not turn everything into a series with 9,000 sequels in it, which I always appreciated. Like I said, their efforts on the NES were very hit and miss. Some of their games were not that great, and others were actually really cool. This is one I never played, but it looks like I probably should have given this a chance, because oh, what is that? Whoa, okay. Sick. So, okay, let's bring this back again to how this feels a bit like Prison City. So in Prison City, there are 3 power upgrades that you can get in a level, right? And if you get all 3 of them, you juice up your weapon, but it only lasts until you take 3 hits and then you lose it again. In this, it looks like you only have to pick up 1 power up to get it. But since I took a hit there and lost one of the pips, it looks like if you lose 3, if you take 3 hits, you lose it. But as long as you can find the power up, you only need 1 pickup to get it. So that's a bit of a different thing. Yeah, this is got, and apparently it has Castlevania bats in it. Well, that's a thing. Not the type of enemy I would expect to see in a game like this, but you know, why not? Why not? Okay, so I picked that up there. Now, what does that do? Okay, how do I actually... Okay, so you pick your power up with the by pausing and doing it here, and select uses it. So that was a grenade, which is kind of a screen clearing thing. Again, a la Prison City. I don't know what this thing looks like, an MRE ration, but I have to check what that is. Okay, so I lost my Uber armor there, sadly, but and here's the door. Sector 1 ID confirmed, lock released. Okay, and we actually have an enemy meter here, which we also do. I like games that do that. So if I use this, what does it do? Okay, that totally is an MRE. It's a healing power up. Gotcha. Interesting they made that like a little tin can instead of a like a traditional like medical symbol or something. Okay, well, that boss wasn't too bad. That guy really works his arm, does a full body run, you know what I mean? This screen here in particular reminds me of Strider on the NES. Cool. All right, well, let's just pick another level and go here, see what's what. I definitely like this. This plays pretty cool. This is definitely one of Taito's hits on the NES. Like I said, the thing that's cool about Taito is their games always felt different too. Like you could tell there were really different groups of people that worked on them. Like a Capcom or a Konami game, there were a ton of both on the NES, and they were both very, very good. But you could always tell you know what I mean? When a game was a Capcom game or a Konami game, they all had very similar, especially when it came to music, I found, but in other ways too. You could always just sort of tell that they, when a game was from one of those developers. A lot of the time you could just guess it without knowing it, you know? Taito was not like that. Like if you compare this game on the NES to a game like, say, Wrath of the Black Manta, if you didn't know they were both made by the same developer ahead of time, you'd never guess. Like in terms of the visual style, the way the games play, the music in particular, was very, very different between those two. Because I'm gonna guess it's you know, not knowing anything in particular, I'm gonna guess it's because maybe Taito teams were a little bit more autonomous and isolated in the sense that they didn't really talk to each other. So each team was really their own sort of entity within the company, if you will. That's how it always felt to me anyway. But yeah, I actually really like how this plays. The controls on this are sharp as a tack. Oh, and it's got a password system. Would you look at that? Oh, how nice is that? Batman didn't have that. Just takes you back to the start of the level, but that's fine. So yeah, I mean, this has got Prison City has this written all over it. You know, it's like I've said before, maybe Prison City doesn't so much wear its inspirations on its sleeve as it wears them like a full body tattoo. But that's okay, because I mean, I didn't even know this game existed until my commenters pointed it out to me. You know, it's not so much that, like, I knew that NES Batman existed, but I never ended up playing it back in the day. I never knew this game was a thing. So, like I said, it was popular enough that it did get a sequel. I think the sequel was quite a bit different from the base game, but it did get a sequel. But given what people are willing to pay for carts of this game, it clearly wasn't that huge. So I'm not surprised that a lot of people don't know about this. And yeah, I don't bemoan Prison City at all for taking a significant amount of inspiration from this game, because this is a good game. And, you know, using as inspiration things that are good, better than the alternative, am I right? So, but yeah, I said I'd probably put Batman on my deep backlog. This is absolutely going on the deep backlog. And maybe even the sequel if it's also good. I'll have to see about finding that, because finding Shatterhand 2 online, there were actually though they were expensive, there were lots of copies of this for sale on eBay. There weren't too many of Shatterhand 2, and if I recall, I think I want to say a bare cart was even pretty pricey. So yeah, that might be one I have to stick to an emulator on. Don't tell Taito. Keep that between us, okay? But yeah, I really like this. The visual style is good. Again, this doesn't have the really cool color contrast that Batman does. It's a bit of a safer color palette, but also it is also visually distinct. Like, it stands out in some way. The use of orange in this level in particular is interesting. You don't see a lot of that kind of thing. So I still like that. The music's not bad. Definitely fits it well. The controls are really, really good. Like I said, this game plays sharp as a tack. It, you know, a lot of as much as I love the Mega Man games, I don't like how Mega Man is slippery and how crappy his jump is. Mega Man always felt a little bit laggy to me, even back when it was new. This doesn't at all. This is so sharp, and it has multiple different jump heights. You know, your character, his animations are short enough. I mean, his animations are pretty comical, but also his jump animation and the like are short enough that you don't feel like you don't feel you're getting caught up or screwed over due to animation, you know, due to waiting on animations to complete or anything like that. Does have some of that NES hard platforming though. But yeah, I like the way this plays. Now, the one thing I did notice there that would be a little bit of a bummer is that if you picked a level in the stage order that you were just kind of like, oh, I'm not having fun with this, this is too difficult, it looks like maybe I should try this out, but it looks like you're locked into that. So when you die, you can say continue or end. I'm curious if that lets you go back to stage select. At least Mega Man did that. So if this doesn't let you go back to stage select, that kind of sucks. So maybe we should try that. So I'll tell you what, let's just suicide this thing. Get me. I've learned I was wrong. I don't deserve to save the world. This world is better off without me. Oh, okay. I still had one more. Shoot. Get your target practice in, boys. Come on. There we go. So let's see. Okay. But you can say, well, continue is going to need the password. So yeah, you better make sure that you that you pick the stages in the right order, that you're prepared to grind them out, because it's not going to let you go back and re-choose. That's a bit of a bummer. I do like the fact that Mega Man did that, but yeah, that's Power Blade. I like this one too. This one's definitely also going to go on the deep backlog. It is good fun, and I really do like the way it plays. I'm sure it's quite a bit more difficult, but I'm up for the challenge. So, all right, last up is Shatterhand. Let's see what this one's all about. Okay, here we go, guys. So this is Shatterhand. This is the last one. So I was initially a little bit nervous when I booted it up because I saw that it's a Jaleco joint. Jaleco was famous for putting out a lot of games that were kind of like the Wish.com versions of other games. They had a couple of really good ones, but they also put out some stuff that was pretty gnarly. But then I saw that Natsume was involved with it. Natsume was, and to this day, still is a pretty well-regarded developer. So I'm going to see about that. So Natsume making it makes me definitely a lot more... makes me feel better about it. If it was just Jaleco, I'd be like, I don't know, man. So this is called Shatterhand, and well, I can see why straight off the bat. So these little rune things that I'm picking up are interesting. So we talked with the previous game about how in Prison City there's a did that just power me up, I guess? So it looks like I don't have score here. I have gold. Oh, there's score in this too. And it's all, every one of these games has that mechanic where they hide the score off the main game screen. That was not actually that commonplace, but okay, sure, why not? Oh, apparently that's a bag of gold that you punch to get more gold. Man, if only real life worked like that. So we talked before how in Prison City there's this mechanic that Shatterhand definitely had. Okay, so there's the grapple mechanic. So you can grapple onto these chain link fence kind of things. So in Prison City, there were these 3 sort of runes found throughout the game. Oh, hi. Whoa. Interesting. And there were these 3 runes found throughout the game, and when you pick them up, you got a more powerful version of your gun. But you could then take 3 hits and you lost it after that. Shatterhand had something very similar to that. This kind of has something like that, but it's actually a fair bit different. It looks like when you pick up 3 runes, you get this little bot guy that I'm gonna take a guess and say that he has different powers that are dependent on, and what those powers are dependent on the runes that you pick up. That's a cool idea. I like that mechanic a lot. And it looks like he can actually only take so many hits as well before he's gone. So he fires at the same time you do, you know, limitation of only having 2 buttons on the controller. So it looks like your character only has his fist, or I'm guessing that's what Shatterhand means. Probably you are the Shatterhand. And then I'm guessing yeah, that's kind of your secondary thing, is that little option that you pick up, and whatever guns it has. Oh, get back here. Oh, I hate enemies that run. Why are you running? And I'm guessing that little these little symbols that you pick up dictate what kind of weapon that has, and it has its own life bar separate from you. That's a really cool weapon idea for weapon design. I actually kind of would have preferred that in Prison City rather than just, you know, you find 3 things that you can only find 3 of in the entire level, and you okie dokie. Okay, first boss. That wasn't that long. Oop. Oh, hi-oh. Okay, another very much pattern-based boss in a small little arena type room. Very much like Shatterhand. I'm gonna say this boss is not as hard as either of the ones in either Shatterhand or Batman, at least as first bosses go. The pattern of this guy is pretty darn easy to learn, and his attacks are very, very slow and don't generally have a wide area of effect either. Oh yeah, that's not bad at all. Oh yeah, way easier. All right. So far, solid job, Natsume. You have removed the fear I had when I saw the Jaleco logo. Oh, level select. Look at that. Pick this one. Yeah, okay. I can see a little bit of Batman in Prison City, but that game is very much a mashup of this and Power Blade. I'm gonna say, though, at least based on what I've seen so far, it's probably about 70 to 80% Power Blade and maybe 20 to 30% this. Though funny enough, like I said, this little option mechanic here, as you're saying, oh, there's an NES slowdown. Oh yeah, I missed you. Actually, no, I didn't. But yeah, this has suddenly ramped things up a little bit. I actually would much have preferred this type of secondary weapon mechanic rather than, like I said, just finding 3. Oh, he's got like a little bouncy thing now. Rather than just finding 3 things that give you a temporary boost to your main weapon as long as you don't get hit 3 times. This is much more interesting. The fact as well that you're not just picking up, you know, this option power up, you're actually picking up a character who's, wow, that took a while. You're actually picking up a secondary weapon that is a semi-autonomous character who significantly, whose attacks vary significantly based on what you pick up. I think that's very cool. Like you saw, we went from having a directional, like a unidirectional laser to this kind of, that kind of like bouncing attack thing. I think that is super neat and innovative. Really cool way to do a weapon system in a game. You know, this game came out in '92, so this was after the Super Nintendo was out, and this was definitely late in the life of the NES. So this is when developers had, you know, figured out a lot of technical challenges of the platform and were learning how to make the system do things that it wasn't necessarily thought to be capable of at the time. So this is when some very interesting creative stops were being pulled out. And some of the most interesting NES games, and frequently the least played, are the ones that came out late in its life when the Super Nintendo was already out. And Unfortunately, you often won't hear of a lot of those because a lot of people did keep their NESs for quite a long time. But, you know, a lot of people did move on to the 16-bit systems fairly quickly and kind of left the 8-bit era behind. And that was kind of a shame because there are some real gems that deserve to be more successful than they ended up being. So you got to very clearly time yourself when you're dealing with those boulders to make sure that you just don't get wrecked early on. I'm not doing that well, obviously. Again, blind plays, you know, I haven't played these before, so I don't really know what the heck I'm doing. But yeah, the influence of this is definitely evident in Prison City as well. But Power Blade, without a doubt, the most. Wow, this is a factory high score of 200 grand. It's a big ask. I'm gonna guess, oh, that's too bad. This has the same problem of it doesn't let you go back to the level select screen. So any level you pick, you're locked into. Prison City, you can go back and choose a different level if you want. I do wish this had that. That's kind of a bummer. I mean, the Mega Man games let you do that, right? So yeah, that's probably a deliberate design choice, but I don't know if that's one I really agree with. But yeah, I like the way this one plays as well. The color palette in this one is definitely, this is the least visually interesting of the three. Not to say it doesn't look good. I think as NES games go, this actually looks pretty solid, but it doesn't, definitely doesn't have the unique visual style and flair of either of the previous two games, Batman in particular. But it does still look good. It does look memorable. This guy has a much more normal, far less exaggerated walking animation than the guy in Power Blade did. But the controls again are quite snappy. It's responsive. There is slowdown in it, which is a bit of a bummer, but not at all uncommon in this era of systems. You know, people are all about them frame rates today, but back in the day, it was not at all uncommon for games to be designed in such a way that they actually pushed the system harder than it could handle. And that's effectively what that was. That frame rate drop is the NES processor being effectively pushed past 100%. So it has to drop frames because it just doesn't have the processing power to do what's being asked of it. And that was not at all uncommon, and it was a much harder thing to balance for because of the very limited CPU that the NES had in it at the time. So it's pretty normal. It was something you never liked to see, but it was not a sign of like a bad game or even a badly optimized game when that happened on the NES. In some cases, to achieve some of the things they wanted to, that was just what they had to do. You know, so I don't hold that against them. There we go. Paid attention there, and we got our little dude back now for the boss fight. But I really like that rune system for determining what secondary weapon you get. I do wish Prison City had ate that. See, now my dude has like a friggin', now I have like a bot with a samurai sword. Like, how freaking cool is that? Like, that's way more interesting than what Prison City did. Prison City took the, oh yeah, step to me. Prison City very much took the Power Blade tact of that type of thing. But I prefer this myself. I think this is more interesting. I'm gonna do way better on the score this time. Oh yeah, fat points. Let's pick a different level here. Let's just do this one. Let's do the first one in. Hopefully this one's a little less punishing. I like that build-in too. That's pretty cool. Oh wow, look at that triple layer parallax scrolling. Oh wow, now that is technically very impressive. that was a very tricky thing to do on the NES CPU. You had to have some real inventive ninja programmers on your team to be able to pull that off effectively without a major performance hit, especially triple layered like that. I'm actually really impressed with that. Like this game doesn't have a bad presentation to it at all, but that elevates it a notch, at least in the technical department. Very, very impressive. This was something even a lot of games on 16-bit platforms were not regularly pulling off. You throwing baseballs out of your mech suit that doesn't have a helmet? I think you have your priorities messed up there, bud. Concussions are real, man. So this level, oh my God, there's a lot of trap chests in this thing though. Holy geez. This level definitely feels like one out of Prison City with the conveyor belts and things like that. There's a level very, very much like that in the game. So again, it's clear where the inspirations really came from. There was some from this, but it was mostly from Shatterhand and a little bit of Batman, but not too much. But I'll be honest with you, even though I don't know if I necessarily agree that Batman had a big influence on Prison City, I'm glad y'all pointed it out to me, because Batman's pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to playing through that now, and I'm happy to add that to my my deep backlog, because the deep backlog the deep backlog contains games that I played and never finished, because I finished far fewer games back then than I do now. But it also is trying to up my own gaming literacy, if you will, basically missing out on games that, ooh, that's another cool power up. Basically missing out on games that everybody said were good and that I just never played at all. And everything that we've played in this video is one of those. And honestly, I like all of these. I'm gonna try. I got a cartridge for 2 out of 3 of them. I'm gonna see if I can find a cartridge for this somewhere at a reasonable price too, because I would like to play all these on a legit system. You know, even though NES emulation is about as close to perfect as you can possibly get these days, I'd like to actually give these a go on OG hardware. And yeah, I'm gonna say that all 3 of these are gonna go on my my deep backlog. I'm enjoying all of these for very different reasons, similar but different reasons. That, you know, they all play different. They're all challenging. They all play different, but the way they all play is interesting, and they play different enough that it's not going to feel like you're playing 3 versions of the same game. You're going to be playing 3 different games that have their own little differences and flares to them. And these are, yeah, in terms of games that brought something interesting and different to the NES, 100%. These all did. These are not just generic NES action platformers, because boy howdy were there a lot of those. These are really, these play really well. They take some interesting advantage of the NES hardware, and they have very interesting mechanics to them in terms of weapon design. And never fought against these guys, so I have no clue what their patterns are. Doesn't actually look that bad, but except I boned that up there. Yeah, they all have very unique mechanics. They're all technically quite impressive in their own ways. They have their own unique art styles, and none of these feel like the kind of game that were designed to either, you know, like a lot of Jaleco games, like I said, were games that were just rip-offs of other games done worse. You know, not everything, but a lot of what Jaleco produced were titles that were like, oh yeah, this is like this, only it's not nearly as good. Kind of designed to hoodwink people into, usually clueless parents, into buying, you know, a bad game instead of the game that, you know, their kid actually wanted. They were the Lee Carvalho's putting challenge to, oh jeez! Is he dead, or is this a second form? No, that's a second form. Okie dokie. Well, I wasn't expecting that. I was wondering why this was so easy. Holy geez. Okay, well that got interesting. Yeah, it was, you know, a lot of Jaleco games were the Lee Carvalho's putting challenge to the Bone Storm. If you're an old Simpsons watcher, you'll know what that reference is. But this one is really good, and mostly because it was Natsume who made it, and Jaleco just put it out. But yeah, these are all good. If you like action platformers from the 8-bit era, honestly, I recommend all three of them. And I'll be playing all three of them, I think. I think I'll be working on these eventually once we get the streams up and going again. So yeah, that's the third of the Prison City inspiration trifecta. Very clear that it was, but I'm glad somebody made a new game that has some of the cool mechanics of games like this, because I never knew about them before Prison City came out, and neither did a lot of people, I think, and maybe that's going to expose people a little bit more to them. So yeah, once again, thank you to everybody who watched my Prison City video and made it an unexpectedly large success when it comes to my channel. And to everyone who did leave comments pointing out the inspiration, I'm really glad you did that, because you've given me some other cool stuff to add to my backlog. And, you know, though my backlog is approaching infinite at this point, I always appreciate finding more cool stuff that I can add to it and try out. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little interesting sort of 3-part blind play. You know, I'd like to do more stuff like this eventually, especially because I do cover a lot of modern retro stuff on the channel as well, a lot of which is going to have inspirations from past games. So I like to be able to go back when possible and see where the things I cover, like what their roots are, you know what I mean? And this was a cool opportunity to do that. So yeah, let me know what you think about these games down in the comments down below. Let me know of other games like this that you think might have inspired Prison City. Go check out that video if you haven't. And if you think that other things inspired it, I'd love to hear about them and maybe try them out. And let me know what some of your other favorite NES action platformers were. There were a lot of them, and I'm always up for trying some more stuff as well. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, everybody. I do appreciate it. And if you like what you saw here, as usual, please do all the normal YouTube things. And you can also follow me over at twitch.tv/pxabstraction. I'm going to be starting up my streams again soon, focusing on retro stuff and that deep backlog that I talked about. That's where you're going to be able to watch me actually tackle some of these old titles and see what I think of them. So if that does interest you, go drop a follow over there, because there's going to be cool stuff coming, and we have a fantastic little community there, and I'd love to see you be a part of it. Thank you again, everybody, and I will see you on the next Retro Ramble. You folks have yourselves a good one. Take her easy.